Great disclosure. I don't know what bothered me more, the fact that I was a failure as a husband, or the fact that I was a failure as a father. I don't know if I was depressed or just pissed off. It was a little confusing, to say the least. I had spent my whole life trying to make things better for my family, and all I ended up doing was providing things and money for them. It just wasn't working. It quickly became quite obvious that my only function was to fill the well. I loved my wife, and I loved my children. Please note that this was all in the past tense. I have my own business. Terry Martin and I grew up together. We have been best friends since elementary school. Terry and I started a company right out of vocational school, and it grew faster than we could have imagined. So technically, I should say we have our own business. A few years later, we both married our high school sweethearts. Life was good. For the first 15 years or so, everything was great. Things were going well in the company. Terry and I were both making good salaries, and we had over 30 full-time employees. Terry and his wife Myra had 3 sons. Allison and I had twins, a boy, and a girl. We both had modest-sized mansions in McMansion. We enjoyed outside restaurants, nice vacations, and expensive cars. Terry and I were very business-oriented. Business came first. We realized early on that it was important to keep our customers happy and our employees happy. 1/3 of our best employees were ex-convicts. We hired them straight out of prison vocational school. In 8 years, only 2 of the ex-cons turned out to be a problem, and that was quickly taken care of by the other cons. They were doing well, and they weren't about to let some bums ruin their lives. We supported several community programs and even sponsored a softball team. Unfortunately, my family life wasn't fair either. Anyway, my wife became socially active for several progressive reasons. I wasn't crazy about it, but she let me do my thing, so I let her do hers. Politics was never a part of our family, but all of a sudden we started talking about current events and political things going on. I tried my best to avoid such discussions, but it was to no avail. The more I disengaged or ignored her, the more determined she became. It was as if CNN and Fox News were showing at the same time. I started trying to avoid her, but it was difficult. As my wife and I grew distant from each other, so did my children. For years, I tried to get my son Jacob interested in an activity. I didn't care if it was sports, hiking, or hunting, and fishing. All he wanted to do was play video games and, as I found out later, enjoy marijuana from time to time. All my attempts were rebuffed, and eventually my wife told me to just leave him alone and mind my own business. I would have resisted even more, but my son smirked at me when she said that. My daughter Jordan was a clone of her mother. She used to be Daddy's little angel, but now she didn't seem to recognize her father in me at all. I couldn't count all the piercings she had. Even though she was on birth control, it didn't stop her from catching an STD twice. She loved to accompany her mother to all sorts of political meetings and social gatherings, but wouldn't even consider going out for ice cream or pizza with her father. I gave up trying to contact her, too. One of the most serious setbacks occurred when I refused to donate money to the company for one of its endeavors. They wanted to provide needles to drug addicts so they wouldn't get infected from shared or dirty needles. Allison didn't speak to me for a week. It was hard to imagine that things could get worse. The company Christmas party was approaching. Terry and I insisted that Allison and Myrna take care of it. Myrna was more than happy, but she had to carry Allison, kicking and screaming to help her. For the past few months, Allison had been leaving the house more and more often. She was also taking overnight trips to participate in various progressive events. I don't know if they were protests, rallies, or seminars. It didn't really matter. Jacob switched from weed to pills. I don't know what kind, but that didn't matter either. Jordan now had his own website with DVRs. Myrna did a great job with the Christmas party. She tried to share the credit with Allison, but Terry and I knew better. We had beer and wine, but no hard liquor. We had 100% employee participation. I think the annual bonuses had something to do with it. Allison and the kids were certainly there, but didn't seem to enjoy it as much as everyone else. There were no sit-downs, but there was plenty of food. "John, I need to talk to you for a minute." Terry tried not to draw attention to himself as we stepped aside. "What's up?" I tried to speak casually to put him at ease. "Jorge Martinez needs to talk to you, but he's a little worried." "What do you mean?" "Well, he doesn't want to ruin the party and he doesn't want to make you angry, but he does feel there's something you need to know. Jorge was one of our ex-cons. He was with us for 6 years, and we didn't want to lose him. All right, bring him here. That won't be a problem, will it? Terry wrinkled his nose slightly. Jorge and his wife Elena seemed a little worried. I smiled and tried to appear casual to reassure them. Terry quietly walked away. Mr. Terrell, we don't want to cause any trouble, but when my wife saw your wife today, she felt she had to say something. I tried to talk her out of it, but she insisted. I looked at his wife and nodded my head as a sign that she could continue. She looked at Jorge, nudged him with her elbow, and gestured for him to speak. Elena works at the Hampton Inn. She is in charge of cleaning on the 5th floor and has been working there for 2 years. Your wife and a Mr. Franklin have been using room 511 once or twice a week for the past year. They usually only stay for 2 or 3 hours and always in the same room. I was at a loss for words. I had a million questions, but I didn't think this was the right time or place to ask them. Elena looked relieved that it was all coming out, but Jorge was very anxious because he couldn't figure out how I was going to react. I just took his hand with both of mine, looked him in the eye, and said, "Thank you." I smiled at Elena and gestured for them both to return to the party. Jorge relaxed. On my way out, I passed Terry. Give Jorge a raise next month. Kyle Franklin ran the city's parking authority. I didn't know him very well, but I knew he'd been a civil servant for almost 20 years. He dreamed of running for mayor someday. He was married to Nora Franklin, owner of one of the top real estate firms in the county. She was an attractive woman and liked to place her ads on the sides of city buses. I wonder if she had a special fare. That night, my wife reprimanded me for leaving the party early. The kids weren't too pleased either. I just smiled and went back to reading. Mickey Spillane was still a good read after 70 years. Monday morning, I was comfortably awaiting Nora Franklin's arrival at the Franklin real estate office. The receptionist had prepared hot coffee, and I grabbed a big tray. She walked in around 10, stopped, and lingered for a moment to look at me. I kept wondering when you'd show up, Mr. Terrell. It took you long enough. I followed her into the office and took my coffee with me. I guess when you own a company, you can set your own hours. Why didn't I think of that? John, can I call you John? I nodded approvingly at her. John, I'm not going to rehash all of this drama. I just want to know what you plan to do. I have a lot of questions, and I don't want you to mess it up, and it wasn't what I expected. I thought I was going to make a big reveal. Oh my God, I was wrong. Miss Franklin, I guess I'm way behind in that department. I didn't even realize it myself. A friend just told me. I have no idea what to do next, and I have no one to confide in or discuss it with. Honestly, I assumed you were as much in the dark as I was. John, I've known about this for over 6 months now. I probably should have contacted you sooner, but I had a lot of things I had to do, and I didn't want you to ruin the whole thing by doing something rash. Oh, by the way, call me Nora. What do you mean, something rash? Oh, you know, like doing Rambo and Kyle in public, maybe making them look awkward in some awkward way. It's hard to tell what you macho men are going to do when something like that happens. I think it's much more effective if you approach it calmly. I've never considered myself macho. Well, anyway, what are your plans? What can I do for you? I leaned back in my chair and took a deep breath. I think we're going to need more time. Over the next 2 weeks, Nora had friends. For the past few months, Nora had been systematically framing her husband. The U.S. IRS was very interested in his taxes. Nora carefully hid her personal and business taxes separately from his taxes. The state attorney's office was looking into how he diverted public funds intended for roads and transportation to other unspeakable projects. The city was probing his use of city funds to pay motel rent and restaurant. What made it really interesting was that she was able to get them all to cooperate in her investigations, so they all came together at almost the same time. However, none of these attempts helped my situation in any way. She did, however, make a deal to sell her real estate business, which I found interesting. I could do something similar. My big problem was home and family. I no longer had a close relationship with my wife or any of my children. I really hated to leave the business, but it was necessary. Nora had that decision to make. About a month later, I announced that we were going to move to a new house. Allison's ears perked up, but all I heard from the kids was a groan. They They loved our house. Jordan was interested when I mentioned the pool, and Jacob thought the 3-car garage might be neat. The trip to see the new house went well. It was twice the size of our current one and cost more than twice as much. Each of the kids had their own bathtub. Allison commented on the fact that we didn't have enough furniture to properly furnish the new place, but seemed pleased when I told her she could buy all new things. She liked the professional kitchen. To top it off, I informed them that we would all have new cars. For the first time in many years, I was a great father and husband. Nora did a good job of finding a new home for me. It only took her 2 days to get all the paperwork ready. When I informed Allison that Franklin Real Estate was handling the transaction for us, she cringed a little, but then seemed to accept it. Nora already had a cash buyer for our old house. I thought it was interesting to see my wife and my wife's lover's wife sit down at the same table to sign the papers. There were no fake greetings. We just sat down and got to work on the paperwork. The first stack to sign was for the sale of the old house. Allison and I both signed everything as presented by Nora and then had it notarized. We made $450,000 from the sale and transferred it into an electronic account. Allison was feeling pretty good and wasn't paying attention. She was just signing. The paperwork for the new house was next. Allison smiled when Nora mentioned that the price was $900,000. She smiled again when I mentioned that I was putting the new house in her name for tax purposes. She thought that was a great idea. What she didn't notice, however, was that it wasn't a contract of sale, but an option to purchase. If she had read the fine print, she would have seen that the option was for 120 days. If no actual purchase was made by that time, the price would revert to $1 million, and the $40,000 option would be canceled. I hated to lose money, but it was worth it in the long run. After everything was signed and notarized, Nora handed her the keys to her new home and congratulated her. It seemed genuine, and I could hardly keep from laughing. Allison was bubbling all the way home. She didn't expect me to actually put the house in her name. She also didn't expect to receive a $10,000 gift card from our local high-end furniture store. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money. The next day was car day. Jacob picked out a Mustang, which I expected. Jordan surprised us all by choosing a lime green KIA Soul. Allison chose a white Lexus. I explained to both kids the importance of opening a line of credit. They seemed to understand, and it made it easier to get both cars in their names and, of course, fully financed. What they didn't think about was that it also meant someone would have to make the car payments. I did the same thing with Allison's new Lexus. I took out 90 days insurance on each of the new cars. The total cash outlay for all 3 cars was just under $600. Most of that money went to tags and titles. Another worthwhile investment on my part. A week later, we all moved into our new home. The more Nora and I worked together, the closer we became. We got together every day. Sometimes I would help her with a project, and sometimes she would help me. We seemed to become very comfortable with each other. Terry handled our welding business, and Nora had enough staff to run the real estate office. All of our efforts were focused on dissolving our marriages. Nora planned to wait until Kyle was indicted by one of the organizations that were investigating him. She didn't know which one would get there first. She seemed to think it didn't matter. My situation was a little different. At some point, I decided I didn't want to get divorced. I had too much to lose, but I knew I had to do something. I just wanted it all to be over soon. Nora came to the rescue again. John, have you ever been to Aruba? Just as a port of call while we were on a cruise, but I never stayed there. Did you like it? I wasn't there long enough to make up my mind. Why do you ask? I have an opportunity to buy a condo in West Oranjestad for $1 million. Would you be interested in something like that? It might be a little difficult for me. I probably don't need anything that complicated. I thought we could go half and half. I'm sure you could do that. I'm sure I could, but you're strong enough to handle it on your own. Why would you even think of including me in something like this? Think of it as a partnership, an investment, so to speak. I envision myself as a shrewd businesswoman. I like using other people's money, and besides, I like your company. It's got my attention. $500,000 will get me a buy-in? I'll draw up the paperwork. You know there'll be paperwork? Absolutely. I thought it was amazing that I had agreed to live with a woman I wasn't even in love with. Now I was more excited about the whole project. Terry and Myrna were fully aware of my problems with Allison and the kids. They were willing to help in any way they could without being intrusive. Terry, I've decided that I want to sell my half of the business to you and Myrna. That's really nice, John, but there's no way in hell we can afford to buy you out. I'd love to, but you know that's impossible. How does $1,000 sound? You want to explain that? Terry, you don't need my help running your business. We both know it's going to run pretty much on its own at this point. I'll be gone soon, and it'll fall on your shoulders. You'll be the sole owner, and you'll make all the decisions. All you have to do is call me periodically for advice. Ah, I see, said the blind man. And I assume there will be a consulting fee attached to that phone call? Terry said, smiling. Think of it as something like a lifetime annuity. Don't worry too much about it. Just make it easy on yourself. Our company's lawyer has drawn up all the necessary paperwork. Terry and Myrna were a little concerned that I was getting myself worked up, but I assured them that I had everything under control. It's nice to have a friend you can trust. It seems funny, but I never bothered to check out Allison's affair with Kyle. I never felt the need to receive compromising photos, emails, or phone messages. I wouldn't have needed them. I wasn't going to get a divorce. I was going to do what 21% of deadbeat dads do, just walk away. 2 weeks later, Kyle Franklin was arrested. I don't even know who the awards were given to. He wasn't a major crook or embezzler. He was just a petty public servant who too often put his hands in other people's pockets and tangled with my wife. Nora and I were long separated before all the dirt came out. She sold her company along with 32 rental properties and 3 apartment buildings. She was set for a new life. I was her designated boy toy. That is how she addressed me, and I did not find it offensive. We did manage to consummate our relationship after arriving in Aruba, but never went through any sort of courtship phase. It was as if everything had been arranged in advance. I didn't miss my children. Does that make me a bad father? Given the circumstances, I don't think so. I didn't miss my wife. Does that make me a bad husband? I don't think so. Nora became an avid golfer. She tried to get me interested, but there was no spark. She had a steady group of girls she played with 3 days a week. We met up with them and a dozen other former players a few times a week to socialize. I adapted to it very quickly. It was a new carefree lifestyle and it was really enjoyable. I decided to take up painting to fill my time. It was something I had always wanted to do. Every morning I would go down to the docks and set up my easel. It really wasn't working out for me. I would come back to the apartment later, and the first thing I would do was scrape all the paint off the canvas so I could start over the next day. It's been 3 months now, and I still have nothing to show for it. Nora thinks that's pretty funny. I've been avoiding contact with anyone but felt I had to call Terry. John, it's about time. I was beginning to be disappointed in you. Are you settled in yet? I'm settled, and I feel better than ever. It was the best decision I ever made. Terry and I spent the next 10 minutes talking about my new life in Aruba. I had no trouble convincing Terry to bring Myrna here for a week or 2. Things were going well. Terry apologized for not sending any checks for the consultation, but I forgot to give him an address or bank account number. I didn't need the money anyway. Terry, I hate to bring this up, but could you please update me on the status of my wife and family? I don't know everything, but I'll tell you what I can. Things don't seem to be going very well without you. First of all, Jacob's been arrested. He was caught with 3 kilos of fentanyl in the trunk of his car. The car, of course, was impounded, and since he was over 18, he was locked up. Allison couldn't bail him out. Don't know anything more about that. I'm sorry to hear that. I know I'm his father, but honestly, I really don't give a shit what happens to him. I tried, and it didn't work out. Jordan's situation isn't much better. Shortly after moving into her new home, she doubled down on her website. From what I heard, she got a lot of subscribers, and then one day she told her mother she was going to California to meet some producer guy. 2 weeks later, they found her Kia abandoned in Memphis. Allison hasn't heard from her or herself since. I take it you get most of this information from Allison? Yes. She comes into the office regularly hoping to catch you. I can tell she doesn't believe me when I tell her you're gone. She was furious last week when she got a notice to put an option on the house or vacate it by the end of the month. Very clever, John. She was totally confused. Right now, I don't know what her intentions are. I think some of the utilities were shut off. She couldn't even afford to pay the electric bill. Did you help her? Don't be mad, John. I gave her $1,000 and told her to use it as collateral for some apartment. I'm sure she'll spend it on something else. I laughed a little. All right, Terry, I understand. Just deduct it from my next paycheck. By the way, can't her lover help her? Terry laughed now. He's in worse shape than she is. All I know is what we see on TV. Nothing is known about him right now, but every now and then a racy detail comes out. I think he's going away for a while. Oh, before I forget. Allison's car was repossessed. Since all her credit cards are maxed out, she can't even take a cab. I don't know how she gets around. We chatted a little more about business. Tentative plans were made for an upcoming vacation in Aruba. It was a good conversation. I signed up for an online painting course with a guy in the UK. 2 months later, one of the guys at the marina asked me to draw his sailboat. Nora is worried I might cut off my ear. Life goes on at the end.